Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our video 126. I think I'm redoing this video because I got an interruption in the morning and I think my message somehow got disrupted, and the reason I'm really repeating this video. Welcome to the Speak the Truth in Love ministry. Mbaniriza ku ministry ya Yogera Amazima mu kwagala. Mbaniriza ku video eno eye126 that I want to concentrate on a topic I call work and the generation. Okukola n'omulembe gwaffe. Ngawe nagamba nti I'm trying to arrange different videos. I'm trying to do a series of videos to help the holiday makers out there have something to learn. And I believe my first video was about children. We either learn through listening or experience. My second video in regard to the holiday makers was how our education systems wire us into thinking we are dense. And my third video is something I want to share about work and the generation. Some of these things I'm sharing out of my book, Truth Children Need to Know in Our Generation. Amazima abaana gebetaga okumanya mu mulembe gwaffe. You know, so some of this information is an excerpt from some of these books that you can purchase if you're interested. You know, but in this particular video I want to concentrate on work and the generation. Kati abaana n'ekintu njagala okutulaga. Bible gamba wosoma Abasesalonika ekyokubiri essula eyokusatu olunyiriro lw'ekkumi. Bible gamba ataakole taalyenga. The Bible says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 10 that those who do not work do not eat. You know, why I like passing this enlightenment to children is to encourage our children to be practical people from a young age, because we are living in a generation, we are living at a day and time where abantu basomye, abantu baina masters, abantu baina degree, but people hardly have jobs. People hardly have work. Why? Because we have not tackled certain truth as a generation okuva ku myaka emito. Ekintu kino tetukitakolinze kuva myaka mito, kyova olaba naffe abazadde we are not we are not grooming our children the right way to know that si buli omu ayina kubeera in an 8 to 5 job. You know, first of all, the Bible says in Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 12, it says God will bless the work of your hands. You know, ekyamateeka 28:12 kigamba nti Mukama emikono gyo anagiwanga omukisa. It does not say that God will bless the work of your job. You know, and the reason I'm telling young people, if you do not have a job, look for work, because there is a difference between work and there is a difference between a job. You know, abaana abasinga buli omu asomye naye alinda mulimu. Nenga Bible yegamba nti emikono gyaffe anagiwanga omukisa. Tagambye nti emirimu gyaffe agenda giwa omukisa. And the reason, if you do not have a job, look for work, create work, think of work. Because not everyone is supposed to be in an 8 to 5 job. Not everyone is supposed to be in an office. You know, and the reason I'm addressing these things to the generation. You know, one, we are living in a generation abaana kuva buto tebaagala kola. We are living in a generation where parents know they pay house helps. Asasula omukozi $5,000 yakola buli mirimu awaka, and our children have been trained into thinking abantu abakola balina kubeera abakozi. Chovola bana tubeera mu mulembe oguli wounded. Abaana amanyi buli wakola oyina muwa sente, because we are not training our children the right way as parents in teaching them that work is a blessing. You know, and the reason we are seeing abantu basomye batikira abantu tebalina mirimu, young people are into depression. Abantu basigala wakati alina kyakola kubanga alinda mulimu. And what brings this? It is because we do not want to create work. You know, And we have to know we are not all supposed to be in 8 to 5 jobs. And the reason I am addressing that generation, there are certain truths ngeno chano wenjiita togera amazima mu kwagala tewali muntu agenda kugamba amazima mu kwagala kuba buli omu tafaayo mu nsi. Mutemwewuunya, we are in a generation abantu basomye. Waliwo abatudde emyaka 2 tebalina mirimu. Waliwo abayingira university. Waliwo abakatuula emyaka 5. And it's something that is rampant and ongoing. You know, parents are selling property. Omuzadde n'atunda ebintu alina okutwala omwana emakerere. Omwana asomye talina kyaliko. Why? It is because we are non-practical people. We think we are all supposed to be in the office. We think we are all supposed to be doing 8 to 5 jobs, and the reason we are living in a wounded generation. You know, we are in the blame game in Africa. Abakulembeze tebawadde bantu mirimu. But what brings this? It is because even us as the young generation, we are not tackling this from a young age of knowing we have to be practical. You know, there is something I like telling young people. You cannot tell me you wake up every day to be on the TV, to be on your phone, to be on your laptop, and you expect to get money. Kwa Bible yegamba emikono gyonna agiwanga omukisa. Kati wookeera okulaba TV, wookeera okulaba firimu, wookeera okubeera ku ssimu, Mukama kikyagenda okuteekako omukisa tekiriiwo. These are things I tell young people. We have money for data. Sente za data ozino wa lunaku. Never bajja kugamba tandikawo ekintu onoonya capital. Toyina sente za capital. Why? Because we have these mindsets into you have to be, like oyina kubeera mu kintu kinene nnyo. Tosobola gamba nti okeera kunywa mwenge. Tosobola gamba nti okeera kulaba TV, okeera kulaba firimu. Katonda kikyagenda okuteekako omukisa. Kero ogenda osaawe, Mukama ateekwa omukisa ku kintu. Because there are things I tell young people, we are into the blame game. Bandoga, bamponga, nengo okeera kubeera ku ssimu yo, okeera kulaba movie. We are watching movies. You are watching people who have made their life. We are following people on social media who have made their life. Even they have no time for us. But you have all the money and data to follow people who are not building you. And at the end of the day, you have no work. You know? And these are things I'm tackling as a generation for young people to arise. You know? There are things I tell young people. One, you have to know your parents' blessing is not your blessing. Omukisa gwa muzaddewo si gwe gugo. And the reason we have to learn how to be hardworking. Your parent may have been blessed with an 8 to 5 job. Nga gwe togenda gikola. Muzaddewo bayinza okuba bamulekera property. Nga gwe tewali agenda gikulekera. And the reason woteesootinge ogenda kubonaabona mu nsi. Bajja kusigala kuyitanga mwana wa mugagga naye ng'oli mwana wa mugagga ataliiko pulaani. No, there are things that are embarrassing. There are things I speak to young people. I go to schools like Makerere College, like Ndeje. There are things I tell young people. Your parents' riches are not your riches, and the reason you have to work. Your parent may have been gifted with an 8 to 5 job, and the generation has changed. Things have changed. You may not get a chance of having such a job. And the reason when you do not learn how to work. Nina ebintu bye ngamba abazadde ffenna abantu batya okufa okulekawo abaana baabwe. Naye abaana boofudde obaleese otya basobola okubeera n'abantu nga bamanya emirimu. Are they humble? Nga babalekedde omu tebagenda muwa buzibu nti tebaagala kukola. Kyengamba abazadde tuyigize abaana baffe okuba tulina okufa ffenna lyekkubo. Naye abaana bo baleese otya tewali ayagala kukola n'abaana batayagala kukola. And the reason I speak to young children, the reason I speak to these ones they call planned kids. No, we live in a generation abana bakeera kulaba TV. Now children are on holiday. Bajja kulaga bakeera kulaba TV, bakeera kubeera ku masimu, bakeera kulaba firimu. Mama ali awo yakola emirimu. Abaana bali awo batudde bagenda kusaba emmere. And as a parent, you are not training your children that they have to work. because you think you are going to be there for them. Byengamba abaana muzaddewo kakeera naafo ojja kuzukuka anti gomanyi lukimba kikolera bukolezi. It is why I tell young people, learn how to work. The day your parent will leave this world, when you cannot work, you will be so wounded. Because your parents' riches are not your riches. And the reason you should encourage yourself to work and also make a fortune on your own. You know? We are in a generation, kati abaana bali mu holiday. Naye nze nkugambye akeera kubeera ku TV, akeera kubeera ku firimu, akeera kutambula ku kyalo. You have nothing you want to do at home. Naye ajja kujja asaba emmere. Mami njagala mmere. But you can hardly do anything at home. And because you know your mom is there. No, there are things I tell children. We are in a generation where house helps. Baba twalanga chifufu. Amanyi mama we asasula omukozi. Ne balinyirira abakozi. And there are things I tell children. No, there are things that mesmerize me in our generation. No sango omwana wa university ayomba omukozi teyayozezza mpaleze. And you're asking yourself, omwana wa university omwana omuwala, ayombesa mukozi wakati yayozezza mpaleze. And you're asking, now what, as a mother, how are you training that girl? That young girl who is going to go to university and get married. Because as a mother, you are also showing her it is okay for a house help to wash her knickers. No, we live in a panty liner, and there are things we take for granted, but they are not of God. You know, we are living in a generation where young girls can hardly do anything at a young age. It is why you see we get married, miezi esatu oyagala kudda wamwe wachi. Tomanyi mirimu. Omwami ajagula nakati avundiraawo baggo wakule wamwe buchimba kibakolera. Omwami akusibeka akuzeye wamwe because you do not want to work. And these are things that are ongoing in the generation. It is why even we see marriages have no peace. Abawala tebagala kola mirimu. Amanya asiga enjala tuli mu byakweraga na followinga shiba atamumanyi na mumanya. And these are things I speak to the generation. We are living in a generation where young children do not want to work. Ojagamba mwana okulonda ekipapula. Not in me, sinza akisuddewo. N'omubuuza okironda over coach. But we are not training our children to be hardworking. And this begins from a young age. You know, it is what I tell people. Bana baita planned kid. Bajja kusigala kuyitanga mwana wa mugagga nengo olyawo mu struggle. Tewali yagala kumanya nti oli mwana wa mugagga. No, there are things I tell people. There are things you are not proud of. Bakuyita mwana wa mugagga nengo olyawo olwanira buzigo bw'abantu. No, there are things you will not be proud of yourself when you have not known certain truths in life. Why? Tewali abitugamba. Ojja kusigala kubeera mwana wa mugagga naye ng'otunda kabuuyi otunda njaga kubanga toyagala kulowooza. And the reason I'm addressing the generation, let us know that work is a blessing. Work is a gift from God. You know? Omuntu buli woyagala okukola nga ovudde ng'okyali mwana muto tekigenda kuwa buzibu. But we live in a generation, mama amanyi omwana akerera ku ssimu, omukozi yakola emirimu. Kati n'omwana amanya it is the way to go. Because as a mother, as a father, you are not showing this child the right thing, that children have to work. You know? And the reason we are living in a wounded generation, abantu balina ebipapula, abantu basomye, abantu balina kye baliko, omwana emakerera asiika atya chips. And then you ask her, omwana emakerera asiika atya chips naye ali awo ali mu kusabiriza. Naye nga bamulaba atya nga asiika chips. Omwana emakerera atunda atya paani naye nga oli mu kusabiriza okutakuweesa kitiibwa. No, there are things I tell young people. Ebbeeyi yo tekuweesa kitiibwa ng'osabiriza. Ebbeeyi yo tekuweesa kitiibwa ng'osabiriza. And those are things I tell young people. Wakirinyiigira naye nga nkugamba mazima. Because we are living in a generation where such things are not addressed. And children hardly want to work. Children hardly want to involve in house chores. Because no sango mwana alidde ebikajjo n'ayita omukozi anti jangu obijjewo, and you asking yourself as a parent, how are you training this child? You know, you find a girl mwana mukulu asome wa university rabata nafuna mulimu asiba wakaneta sana kweyoleza ngoyi. And these things are happening and everyone is keeping quiet. Kati omwana omwala otasana kweyoleza ngoyi chichogenda okola mu bufumbo. You cannot do anything because you are not being practical at a young age. No, young people, I share these things out of my experience. I was once in those cocoons and I have been delivered to also deliver others. You know, there are things you were also once in and you were not proud of, and the reason you want to share with someone out there to also pick a leaf and get out of such things. We are in a generation tetwagala kola goloza wacho omuntu ajja kulinya ennyonyi agende buwalabu bamuwandulira amalusi, because we do not want to think. It all comes because we do not want to be practical people at a young age. And the reason I'm here to tell young people, work is a blessing. Those who do not work do not eat. Train yourself to love work. Train yourself to look at work as a blessing and not an obligation. You know, because once you know that work is a blessing and not an obligation, it is how you will do it you will do it with a very happy heart because you have known it is a blessing. You know, there are things I tell young people. It is very important to know certain truth when you're still a young child. You know, you will not be a young girl and you can hardly do anything. Zengamba tuli embaga wano. Buli weekend wabera ye embaga. Nemyezi esatu. Bintamye mami njagala koma. Why? Because we do not want to work. And there are things I'm showing young people. We are all gifted differently. And the reason you have to discover your gift when you are still young. There are things I show people. When you discover your uniqueness, you are not going to work in comparisons. You are not going to work in competition because you have known your unique gift as a child. You know? Our parents are not educating us to get jobs, but they are educating us to get skills that will help us create jobs. You know? And the reason I'm encouraging young people, learn how to work, be a practical person. If you are a practical person, even without a job, because your mind is creative. You know? Togenda kuba cheyo mu America otandike kukulongosa pupu wabakadde nengo osobola okubeera mu Uganda n'oyiya katono, because you have learned how to have a creative mind, and all this comes because you are practical. You are practical as a young child. You know, no, we are living in a generation no sanga abana atwala tata we mu kooti wacharanira property. Kuba atayize kola. Omwana natandika okusibya omuzadde. Omwana natandika okusibya jjajjaawe eyakeera n'akola ebintu. Kuba atayagala kola. We are living in a generation abantu bayombera property. Families this property yafuuka property. Tuyombera bintu by'abafu abagenda naye nga bo baakola. Naye ffe tetwagala kola. Osiba ku ssimu yo naye oli awo oyombera bintu by'abafu. Oyombera bugagga bw'abafu naye gwe toyagala kola. These are things I tell young people. We are living in a time where families are disunited. Why? Because people are into quarrels and wrangles of fighting for land and property because we do not want to work. Omuntu wotukira okusibisa taatawo, okusibisa maamawo, olw'ettaka lye yakola. Kutoyagala kola. And that is the generation. You know, we do not want to work. Why do we think we are hearing people in America, they take their parents, their aged parents to hospice homes? Natunde nyumba. Taina narudde bw'abazadde be. Alaba akaddi ya mutawanya n'amutwala mu hospice home natunde nyumba. Wachi tweyagala kola. And you partake a curse that comes because you do not want to work. You know? No sango omwana omulenzi. Mama ya mulabirira musajja mukulu mama ya mulabirira. Tayagala kulooza, tayagala kola, ali awo mami's boy. Naye olunaku mama wakeera naafa ojja kuzukuka. Those are things I tell people. As a man, you will not be proud of yourself. Nga mama oyo akulabirira. N'omukyala tasobola kuwa kitiibwa. And that is the generation. Mulimu eyo mami's boys eyo. Mami tuweerezeeyo. Chisiba kulaba filimu, chisiba kunywa mwenge, and I'm telling you, you will not be proud of yourself as a man ng'oli mu ebyo. Tewalina mukyala asobola kuwa kitiibwa. Because there are things omusajja kola ekikwambaza empale say empale, but being a man is responsibility. No, there are these mommy's boys nakulaga ye buli kimu mami akimuwa ne mama kakeera naafa ojja kuzuukuka mommy's boy. There are things I tell you, we do not want to work. Ne tutandika okubeera mu blame game, omanyi bandoga, bansaddaaka, bamponga, but you do not want to work. And it all comes from a young age. Ojja gamba omuntu genda osaawa olujja ku kkubo, bandaba batya. You are so proud of your oliawo oyina amalala gwe mwavu. And there are things I tell young people. Tewalya ebbeeyo tekuliisa mmere ng'osabiriza. Naye ng'osobola okukwata oluso n'osaawa ne bakuwa omutwalo. And these are things I show young people. Ojja kunyiigira naye eno channel bagiyita yogera amazima mu kwagala. Because these things are ongoing and no one is addressing them. That's why you see abaana ne batandika alwanira property ya muzeeyi. Naye nga muzeeyi yakeera n'akola property ye ne mukyala we. Naye oliawo lwaki toyagala kukola? Families are into disunity. Abantu ne bayomba pressure ne zirinnya n'ofa ng'okyalina muto afuna pressure. Naye ng'oliawo mu ntalo za kizattaka ez'abafu abaagenda abaakola kwagwe toyagala kukola. These are the things I tell people. I tell young people. Bajja kusigala kuyita mwana wa mugagga naye ng'oliawo mu nsi ebyo biyamba gwe. There are things you will not be proud of. Omanyi oyo gwolaba mwana wa mugagga, oyo mwana wa mugagga nga you are suffering in the world. Oli mwana wa mugagga oliawo onywa mwenge, onywa njaga. Kubanga omugagga teyakuyigiriza kola. Omugagga yakulaga sente nyingi n'otayiga kola. And the reason I tell young people, your parents' blessing is not your blessing. Omukisa gwa muzaddewo si gwe gugo. And the reason oyina kola. Omuzadde yenna ava ku nsi ng'ayigiriza omwana wo kola, ekyo kiba kirabo. You know, that is the greatest blessing a parent can leave for their child. You know? Kubanga omuzadde n'onobeera n'obugagga n'obuwa omwana oyo nga tamanyi kola, agenda kutunda butunzi bintu ba ye tamanyi kola. All they know is waking up to be on their phone, to be on their laptop, to be on their TV. However much you leave them with property, they are going to sell it. Because you have not given them wisdom or skills to know that they also have to work. No sanga abaana abawala, Veronica, oyinayo ku brother wo, twagala kujja mu planned family. No mubuuza planned family gy'onoonya, ne wemba muyina atannawasa. Ne wogiyingiramu, woba toyagala kola, mugenda kuma butyo obugagga bwa family. Temusobola. Kuba naawe oyagala mwana wa mugagga, naye omwagalako ki? Tomanyi kola. Kati ogenda muzimba otya. And these are things I tell young people. You may be a planned child. However planned you may be, if you do not learn how to work, you are going to suffer. Because those blessings are not yours. Omuzadde ne wanaakulekera property, ogenda gitunda ba tomanyi kola. Gwe ky'omanyi kubeera ku firimu, kubeera ku TV, kubeera ku simu. And these are things I tell parents. We are not nurturing our children to also work, you know, to also add to our wealth. Kuba omuzadde yenna ayigiriza omwana okola, ne wamulekera ebintu omwana aba ayongerako tabitunda butunzi. Naye omuzadde atayigiriza mwana kola, nera abitunda butunzi. Baye tamanyi we babikola. Tamanyi we they do not know the cost of working. And the reason I'm speaking to young people, learn working. You go kola ngoli mwana muto. We should remove these mentalities that we all have to be in 8 to 5 jobs. Nabali mu 8 to 5 job omusala tegumala. Then we live in a generation omanyi covid yajja emirimu giganye. I'm telling you, nobuuza, how do others survive? How do others survive? Osanga abasajja balina masters nga bocha bunyama ku kkubo. Nosanga omusajja alina masters agenda sawa nzija z'abantu. Yagula akuuma kubanga amanyi ekimufuula omusajja kola. Tagenda kubeera mu nnyumba ya mukyala ng'omukyala yamulabirira lwakuba emirimu giganye. There are things I speak to young men. There are things we have to know as a generation. Covid yajja emirimu gyagenda ebintu byagenda. Naye abalala bo beezimbye batya? Nosanga omuntu Dr. Mulamba naye ng'akulaga akola juice. Kubanga omusala gudwayo tegumala. Naye oli bajja mugamba akola juice bandaba batya? No, there are things I tell young men. We have to know. As a man, you will not be proud of yourself when a woman is paying bills. And the reason you see there is no happiness in marriages, because whenever a man loses his responsibility, it is very hard for a woman to submit. It is very hard for a wife to submit to any man who is not taking on his responsibility as a man. You know? Abantu people are doing dirty things. Emirimu ebintu byagana naye abantu beeyiya. Nosanga omwana, nosanga nga nenga ali awo avuga boda kubanga amanya alina okutwala ekikumi awaka kyekimufuula omwami. Tagenda kutuula okulinda mukyala mukolerera. And the reason I tell young men, we should arise. You know, we should think. Ekikwabaza empale. It is to be a man who thinks. No, because there are things which we see ebintu byagana and people naye wacha abala bo recovering. Because those who have gotten what abantu balowooza ne beezimba. Nosanga omuntu alina masters nze mbalabye. Naye ng'agenda n'asiika chapati. Kubanga talina byaswalamu. Naye ajja kwewa ekitiibwa ng'alina ekikumi kyaleeta waka. Kubanga musajja kyekimufuula omusajja. And these are things I tell young people. There are things we are not going to be proud of when we have not known certain truth. And the reason we have to know work is a blessing from God. You know? God says he will bless the work of our hands. He did not say he will bless the work of our jobs. If you don't have a job, look for work. You cannot tell me you have money for data every day. But you do not have capital. Take away nyanya, take away pani, bako chokola. Kwa mukama kwagenda okuteeka omukisa. Mukama talina wagenda kuteeka mukisa ngokera kubeera ku simu, ngokera kubeera ku TV, ngokera kulaba firimu. Talina kyagenda kuteeka ko mukisa. You know? Ngokera kunywa walaji, ngokera kubeera mu bbaala, n'otandika omanyi bandoga, omanyi bamponga, omanyi stepmother wange, and those are the blame games we are living in. But you wake up every day at home to be on your phone. And these are things I'm sharing with young children, work and the generation. You know, we have to learn how to work. We have to love work. We have to know work is a blessing from God. We have to know those who do not work do not eat. And the reason you should prioritize loving work. You know, your parents' blessing is not your blessing. You know, and the reason you should work. A parent who has taught their child to work, that is the greatest blessing in life. You know, and the reason I'm speaking to young people, let us embrace work as a blessing, you know, and not an obligation. Thank you very much for listening to me. Kwaheri is bye-bye in Swahili. Kwaheri and have a beautiful afternoon. Bon appetit.